Well, we're just a minute short, so we might go ahead and make a start. Welcome to our 10th Solidarity Economy session. And the way that the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance likes to start these things is if right now, just for the beginning, if you all turn your cameras on, if you have the bandwidth for it, so that we can say a kind of general hello to everybody and we know who's in the room before we actually commence. Say hi. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you from the traditional lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung people, lands that were never ceded. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I would invite all of you to acknowledge the land you're on in the chat and or in your name, your profile name, however you'd like to acknowledge where you are and whose land that you're joining us from. The Solidarity Economy sessions were initiated at the start of COVID, really. We were kind of, AFSA was looking at a seed sovereignty campaign and a water sovereignty campaign. And then we were hit with a pandemic. And we thought, actually, what we need is a solidarity campaign. We need to light a fire under the many actions around the country to show the things that are happening and help others see what's possible. So we've had talks on community-supported agriculture, water. Oops, I forgot to say you should also have your sound off. Yeah. On cooperatives, we had Friends of the Earth here, we had Artist as Family, we've had David Holmgren talking about permaculture solidarities, Farmer Incubator talking about supporting new farmers onto land. And we intend to continue the series next year. This is probably the last one for 2020 before we have our food sovereignty convergence coming up starting at the end of next week. And that'll run with daily, hourly sessions that'll be determined in a session with everyone on conference style. But tonight, what we're going to do is have a conversation with the wonderful Michelle Maloney of the New Economies Network Australia. And I hope everyone else is excited, like I am, to hear more about how they've been going since I think the idea first arose really in 2016. And they've been running the New Economies conferences for a number of years. And Michelle also wears another hat with the Australian Earth Laws Alliance, which also for a much longer time has done a lot of really important work around all the things that I think to everybody, matter to people over here about care for country and about socially and ecologically just futures for all parts of our ecosystems. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Michelle to share with us some of the NENA story. And then we're going to have more of a Q&A later on too. I think is Bronwyn here yet?
I'm hoping that she can join us, but I might I've resent her the link so that I didn't give her the wrong one. And I might even resend it in about 5 minutes. But
yep, no worries. So we might have her coming from NENA as well. Meanwhile, over to Michelle. Thanks for joining us, Michelle.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you some of the story of the New Economy Network Australia, or NENA, as we fondly call her. I don't know if I can share screen because I'd love to show you our website, and I do have some slides just to run you through some of the info. Should I be able to share, do you think? Normally you have to make me co-host or something.
It says one participant can share at a time. I think it's set up for you to be able to, so have a go.
I have, and it says it's still disabled. So
I've just enabled it for you, Michelle. It should be good to go.
Try again. I can do it without it, but I think pretty pictures can be good. Groovy.
Great.
Okay, so just put the slideshow on. There we go. So yes, good evening, and I am hoping that Bronwyn Morgan will join me, but I think she's moving house, so it's a touch and go opportunity for Bronwyn to join us. But to introduce myself, I firstly would like to acknowledge country. I live in North Brisbane, which is Turrbal and Yagara. Well, in Brisbane we acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara peoples on whose land we live, work and play, but I tend to live, work and play only in North Brisbane these days due to COVID, etc., which is Turrbal country. I'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging, and with great respect, I work with a lot of amazing First Nations elders, friends, colleagues through the work that we do, and am constantly learning and in awe of the oldest continuous culture on earth and their enlightened governance systems that enable them to live in such remarkable relationship with the living world, which is something that I find personally very important. So what I will do, and please do tell me when I've hit, say, 15 minutes. I think you wanted 15 minutes of a prezzo. I'll try to be entertaining and exciting so everyone stays awake, and I'll keep an eye on the time myself too. Because of the framing of your webinar series around solidarity, I guess what I would like to do is talk to you about the New Economy Network in terms of it being a platform for solidarity and sharing and strengthening each other's work. So that's the focus that I'll talk about tonight. This is a wordy slide, but I actually want to read to you the kind of explanation of who NENA is. We're a network of individuals and civil society organisations working to transform Australian society by shifting our economic system to support ecological health and social and economic justice. In terms of the structure, which I think would be of interest to some folks, we are a non-distributing, not-for-profit co-op registered in Victoria under the National Model Law approach. And what I wanted to do was actually show you the exciting website we have before then focusing on some slides. So the reason I want to show our lovely website is because it's a nice way to get a handle on all of the different hubs and things that we're involved in. So I'm just clicking forward. So that's our lovely website, New Economy Network Australia, and that's the shorter version, an network of orgs and individuals working to create an ecologically healthy and socially just society by taking on, I guess, one element of the system that's perhaps not being so supportive in a socially just or ecologically healthy way, which is consumer capitalism or neoclassical economics. NENA has a number of wonderful activities coming up. We have, for example, the conference that Tammy mentioned. Since 2016, since we formed up, we've been hosting an annual get-together for NENA members and folks, and it's a really fantastic opportunity, normally, to meet up in person. This year, we're tackling an online forum with lots of breakouts and space for discussion, and the program should be out later. A number of our incredible younger volunteers started a New Economy journal earlier this year. Was it last year? And it's totally brilliant. You can see on our website down the bottom some of the articles inside the New Economy journal. It's all for free. It's all written by folks from all around Australia, and it's pretty terrific, I think. I'm very, very proud of this is all done by volunteers. None of us have any funding. I'll tell you our story in a moment, but what I wanted to show you here is the sectoral and geographic hubs, just so you can see in a minute when I talk about our structure and why we have built very deliberately a distributed governance or solidarity support structure inside our governance system, is so that everybody has the opportunity to share their knowledge and expertise in a really egalitarian peer-to-peer sort of way. There's some of the sectoral hubs that are bubbling along, and we also have little hubs in different parts of Australia. But what I'll do is go back to my slides and run you through the story so I can do it fairly quickly. Otherwise I can tend to ramble. I'm sure most people would agree. Okay, so I'm going to very quickly tell you about NENA, our goals, our distributed governance approach, a little bit of our history, because it's kind of fun to remember where we've come from. We're very, very young, and some of the activities we're up to at the moment. So about NENA, I'm not going to read this slide, but we were born with 5 core underlying principles: ecological sustainability, look at that, social and economic justice. Get text from website. You can tell I've been flying by the seat of my pants. Democracy, emphasizing locality, and First Nations sovereignty. That's hilarious. I've already mentioned our main objectives, but really NENA is not about creating on-the-ground projects ourselves. We really want to be a platform for people to find each other, show off the amazing work that they're doing individually and in their organizations, connect, and hopefully by joining up the dots, strengthening the good stuff, we can show solidarity with each other and push back at an economic system that is very often highly extractivist towards our environment, not regenerative, and also highly unjust, with a widening gap between the financially rich and the financially poor. So connections, learning, sharing, collective strategies, and I'll talk at the end of my presentation about the civil society strategy for a new economy, which I'm personally really excited about. It's a humble way to get lots of people's ideas and bring them all together to say, this is what we want from this new or well-being economy. So there are 3 dimensions to NENA's work. I've already touched on them. In terms of building networks and connections and shared initiatives, we're very keen to do that within specific geographic spaces. For example, the Hunter Newcastle Hub is chugging along, doing amazing discussions and projects and webinars and contributing into the strategy and hosting this year's conference. And I think Scotty's on. Canberra has an amazing hub connected to some co-ops there as well. But we also like to build our networks and connections within and across different sectors like food, energy, housing, transport, Indigenous economics, etc. Because for many people, the first point of connection is often, you know, where are the folks who are doing what I'm doing, or where are the folks doing something I'd like to do? So jumping into those sectoral hubs is a really nice starting off point. But the creative cross-pollination between those hubs is where the exciting stuff is happening too. So our activities, just those 4 key dot points, we are passionate about building a community of practice so that people really can just sort of reach out and find each other. And we see it all the time. It's become a really wonderful way, particularly across different sectoral groups. NENA is being a bit useful in that way, I think. I certainly hope. Facilitating collaboration, education, and peer-to-peer learning about well-being economy, new economy ideas, which I'll articulate more clearly later. The events are really just a mechanism to help people connect, learn, perhaps get the confidence to ask others to collaborate and to bring people into their own networks and work together that way. This wonderful old quote that everybody knows, but it's really quite perfect for NENA. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. I often have an additional slide that says we do both. Certainly with my other hat on at AILA, it's very important to fight the damaging impacts of industrialized society, whether that's excessive extractivism, unsustainable agriculture or other things. But NENA is very much about building the new, or building not so much new, some of it's very old and ancient in fact, but building the kinds of stuff we want to see more of. This slide is to remind me that we are a founding member of the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, which is a really exciting group. It kind of bubbled up from some pretty cool people, Kate Raworth, who many folks know from Donut Economics, Catherine Trebek, who's one of her colleagues and has worked on sort of finding alternatives to GDP, et cetera, et cetera. It's now a global network of really fantastic people. NENA is a founding member of We All, and we're engaged in a number of collaborative projects with them. We're also an Oceania representative for a group called REPES. I can never remember the proper name because REPES is the acronym in one of the European languages, but it's about the social solidarity economy. And it's a very old network of networks globally. And we're connected to the Post-Growth Alliance and a few other organizations around the world. Our history, which I won't spend long on, but it is nice to remember, this is where I put my AILA hat on. I co-founded the Australian Earth Laws Alliance with a number of other very concerned environmental lawyers in 2011, 2012. And immediately our interests in transforming the legal system to care for the living world, respect the rights of nature, bumped into the realities of the economic system, which is, you know, first and foremost a mindset driving a certain form of interaction with the living world and a destruction of the living world. So in 2014, 2015, a number of us were chatting about where is our equivalent of the New Economy Coalition or the New Economy Organising Network or REPES. And then in 2016, Bronwyn Morgan and I organised a conference together. Her initial focus through her own research grant was on social enterprise, but we both put our heads together and said, let's find out if other people are interested in building some kind of civil society network to really up the ante on joining up and pushing back at an economic system that's destroying a lot of what we love. That's their photos from the very first gathering in 2016. It was actually really fantastic. And then I put my hand up to run another conference in Brisbane the year later, and we had a lot of working groups and discussions, and we launched NENA as an informal network. And that's a bit of an overview of what we've been up to since we launched. We took a year to develop our governance structure. And I don't want to be a governance nerd, although I am one actually. But we put a lot of time and thought into the structures that we've developed, these little hubs all around Australia, so that folks can connect in whatever way they want as members of NENA, and really open up dialogue and opportunities for themselves to do whatever they want within the principles and realm of what NENA's up to. You can see there the different conferences we've had. We try to move them around Australia. We're very disappointed that this year we can't do it in person in Newcastle, but from the 20th to the 22nd of November, if anyone would like to join us online, we'll make it as fun as we possibly can. It'll be over a couple of days with lots of different sessions. We also tend to go where we're invited to run what we call a regional symposium. And that's a way of often shaking the tree and bringing out all the great people who are already involved in economic or localization or environmental restoration, health, education, all the different projects that we think make up the local economy. And you can see all those other bits and pieces. We finally got incorporated in 2019. We took longer than your average bear, but in hindsight, it was really worth doing. And even at the time, we had a little bit of criticisms and a bit of flack for taking our time. But other people were saying, particularly for cooperatives, if you don't build those relationships and build the structure properly, often it'll lose its oomph. So we now have a board of directors, and I'll tell you about our other structure in a moment. In terms of our reach, we're still really small. I think there's about 2,500 people on a mailing list, about 250 paid up members. But often what happens is the people who are connected into our network are already part of several organizations and other networks. So whenever anybody wants to connect with somebody doing something amazing in Australia, we can certainly refer folks, and we do that an awful lot, which is really, really cool. But if any of you listening would like to show solidarity with this beginnings of the Aussie movement to take control of the economy through civil society stuff, please do get in touch. So very quickly, the governance model that we've set up, and I've called it here solidarity through mutual support, sharing, respect, autonomy, and connection, because it was really important to us as co-founders of, and that when Bronwyn and I held the conference, we invited a small group to become part of a steering group. Some of us then became directors, but the really important thing to us was we really wanted to be a genuine network and platform to bring people together. We believe responsibility and power shouldn't reside just with the board of directors. We had to have a legally incorporated management group. So, you know, the constraints of an Australian legal system requiring a certain structure to try to get resources down the track meant that we had to be very creative with our distributed governance model. Basically, I'm going to jump to how NENA works because I like it. It's got pretty pictures. So if you think of the little, the honeycomb shape as our members, once you join up into NENA, we encourage people to get involved with the hub. And in turn, the hubs only have to meet a couple of times a year. And we invite all hubs to be self-created, managed by, you know, or led and coordinated by volunteer coordinators, not to add more work to their life, but for them to bring their own expertise and interests into a space that can share with others. And in turn, they receive learnings and sharings from other people. So NENA members join up, and look, a lot of people are in the hubs that aren't even paid up members. I should be more strict about these things, I suppose, and encouraging paid membership or let's membership, but we just want people to come and play together. And so members create hubs, and that's why we've got hubs all over the place. We only need a couple of people to do that. Then they're invited to run webinars for the national network, and we can have anywhere up to 150 people on a webinar, or 30 or 40 regularly once or twice a month. And we've also got these other two little groups, and I'll talk a bit about them and then I'll wrap up. But the point is, the hub structure is embedded in our constitution. We didn't just leave it to make sure it happened. We wanted to make sure that even when some of us co-founders disappear, and if NENA continues and lives well, lives long and prospers, that there is a structure to ensure the distributed governance networking idea is really at the core of things. So this is our geographic hubs bubbling around. If we had more time and more coordinators, I think we'd have more hubs. Myself and another person volunteer, Rhiannon, volunteer to help keep the glue. We don't bottleneck, but we do keep everyone connected and remind folks to come in and share through webinars and other platforms. lots of different sectoral hubs. Some get sleepy, some get really active. But we've settled in now to a lovely rhythm that if the hubs can get together and have a yarn, contribute into the civil society strategy and share 1 or 2 webinars a year, then it's keeping the discussions really active. So this is the bit I just wanted to mention. We have this participatory budget group and a strategic directions group. These are the 3 elected entities inside the NENA space. So although the board of directors is still, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the directors, the decisions around how different hubs can raise and spend money, which is just starting to get a bit of traction now as a couple of the different hubs are starting to run some events, some really cool ways for them to keep control over their own budget and while still being part of the bigger bucket. And the strategic directions group, another small but mighty group, are trying to lead and coerce and cajole and beg NENA members to contribute into the outward looking strategy document that we're compiling for the first time this year. So the grand plan is that the hubs should make it easier for some folks to share their ideas about all different elements of our society into the development of this sort of annual strategic plan. I don't think I need to say much about that. So this civil society for a new economy strategy, this is where the rubber hits the road. And I have to say the long-term vision I had back in 2016 was, wouldn't it be awesome if ordinary people had a vessel to bring all their ideas together? Because everyone at the local level kind of knows what they want to do. They know the things that would help their communities. And I'm excited that it's taken 4 years, but we're finally getting traction. We've already got input from the Ecological Economics Hub, which is really a focus on environmental issues, but within an economic frame. First Nations, food folks, energy, I think I've got First Nations twice, that's appropriate. The work-related and universal basic income group. All these different groups are kind of suggesting the key things they'd like to do. And it's really, really exciting to see all these ideas. And what has been excellent, and to me not surprising, is that so far all of the suggestions are completely compatible with each other. We haven't had any conflict around different goals yet, but we don't shy away from conflict. We decided that anytime there's a differing views on how we do stuff, that's when we open up discussions so that we can, in fact, you know, tackle difficult tasks and topics like population growth, like, yeah, many other aspects anyway. I think that's all I wanted to say. I've lost my mouse. But I won't go into any of that. We've got a timeline. Oh, I just want to share this. If anyone's interested, we're about to send out a little template, a survey, but we've already got a template on our website, which is a reminder to folks to share their ideas with us. And that's me. I know I went over time and I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're all right. Thanks, Michelle. That was great. It's really good.
Worries.
And as you know, as the leader of another national organization, like I'm really, who's connected to international organizations, it's particularly interesting seeing how we all organize ourselves and then learning from each other's structures. So I'll have a few questions for you.
Sure.
How it's all going. But I saw that Bronwyn has joined.
Good.
And
Hey.
hi, Bronwyn. So I think that Bronwyn is going to share some things from her perspective. Is that right?
Well, I wasn't sure how equipped Bronwyn was, so I think it's...
Is it more like she could field questions when we get to that, or?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a joint sort of, yeah. Sorry, if I hadn't moved past yesterday, maybe, but...
That's exactly right. No, Bronwyn, I told folks that I'd do the prezzo, and then if you had time to join us, which is wonderful, we can both chat and answer questions, so yay.
Great.
I only just got my tech working in the new house, so...
Oh, no, fair enough. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're able to be here.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Well, I guess then I had a question sort of straight up. I'm so glad that you guys are members of REPES, which I also can never, it's French, but I can never remember what it stands for either. And we've been kind of peripherally involved because of our membership with Urgency, which is a member of that network as well. Actually, I think Judith is on the board, but all of those connections that are so important. You talked about how you have the hub and the geographical hub, so sectoral and geographical hubs. And I'm really interested in how, in terms of mobilizing as a collective, that has worked for NENA in terms of, I don't know, like, is it happening where they're coming from those sectors or localities to NENA and saying, hey, we want to connect to start forming the alliances across? Or have you known of good work and reached out to them to try and build the alliances? Because these are endless questions for a national organization, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting approach, because actually the geographic hubs are really just sprouting out of the members who connect with NENA. Like, they might have come to a conference, they become a member, and then they send us a note and go, I'd really like to generate some. And I guess COVID's put a bit of a pause on a lot of the local activities, because for us, the sectoral hubs, as I mentioned, were a way for, so people come to NENA first, and then they either come with an idea of the things that they're most interested in, or they hear a webinar from a hub and go, oh, I'm a NENA member, I'd like to set up the Arts and Culture Hub or the Finance Hub or whatever. So yeah, mostly people hear about NENA and come into it with their own professions, careers, projects, interests. All we do is make it as easy as possible for them to set up a hub. And Rhiannon, who's our new volunteer with me, I call it hub herding, where we actually send out emails and go, hey guys, haven't heard from you for a while. Did you want to run a webinar? Have you guys got time to meet to put some ideas into the civil society strategy? But it's not like the sectoral hubs certainly are not meeting every month to discuss things. They're too busy. But it's almost like a little mini peak body inside NENA about a topic. The geographic hubs were meeting in person, and maybe Scotty can talk to that as well. I think Scotty Foster, he's part of he's convening the Canberra hub. So I don't know, Scotty, did you want to quickly mention what you guys get up to?
Yeah, g'day. So we meet every month to basically have a meetup. We did start out trying to organise things on our regular meetings, but that was a bit of a dismal failure. So now we follow the method that many of the really successful cooperative conglomerates, I'm a co-op nerd myself, the successful cooperative conglomerates overseas have followed, which is to have learning groups, essentially. So we'll do anything really. We've done workshops on how asset-based community development techniques work. We've one of the things that we're working on as a cooperative enterprise at the moment, which is very much linked into the Food Sovereignty Alliance, is a community-owned farming co-op, which will probably be up and coming about early next year. And yeah, you guys will be among the first to hear about that, because we'll be working with Southern Harvest, hopefully, and a bunch of other people in the region who are well involved there. But yeah, we basically do information, learning, workshop. We have guests in. We'll borrow Sea Changes TV, take it down to the food co-op, sit it on the couch, and we'll all sit around and talk to someone from somewhere else. It's a great look. So yeah, and we're associated with a mob called Co-Canberra, who basically hold the same meetings. NENA's very much a networking thing, and we've decided to go, right, well, NENA's good, we'll do the networking through NENA, and we'll do the practical co-op building and the real on-the-ground stuff through Co-Canberra. And that's just been a way for the pre-existing group to work together. Yeah, it's a great system, it's good. NENA people are good people.
Thank you, Scotty. I'd like to tell people that I have not paid Scotty to say good things about NENA. Thank you.
Don't need to. Oh, the other thing we do is you can look on our SoundCloud site, which I'll put in the chat, and there's, I think, about 90 of the talks from the NENA conferences there.
Oh, great. Yeah, fantastic.
So I don't know if that answers your question, if Bronwyn wants to say more about the geographic side of things.
Well, I might just add something about this sort of, this is just a personal observation on the difference between the geographic and sectoral as they're developing. And I'd be interested whether Michelle would agree, but as she said, the geographic have grown quite organically from place and from the ability to sort of meet each other when we can more easily do that again. and then develop very sort of local specific activities. I think my sense is that sectorally people are starting to come. I mean, we have reached out, that's how it began, but that it's starting to shift, and some sectoral groups are coming, perhaps not so much coming to us, but upon finding us, enthused about joining, because what is added by NENA is an overarching narrative that connects a number of disparate activities in different sectors, and that's of value. And so I think that's really, I mean, I imagine the same could happen with AFSA in a different way, even though it's in one sense sectorally specific to food. There are so many different types of food initiatives, and if they're united at some overarching story that contains both values and strategies and practical sort of tools, that's enormously valuable. Now, just one comment there on potential conflict down the line. I'm on the participatory budgeting group of the 3 groups that Michelle organized, and we're still early days, but we're trying to figure out very participatory and sort of co-creating ways of sharing funding. I mean, essentially that hasn't really had a significant material dimension yet, but I can imagine that if you had a really energized sectoral group working on something around food or energy that was tapping into sectorally specific funding elements, and that overlapped with geographical hubs, the question of kind of how to share resources across geographical and sectoral could actually become really tricky, but also exciting. I mean, because
I was going to say, if we ever have to grapple with money and resources, I would be delighted to engage in that potential discussion, debate, or conflict, because it would actually mean we're getting resources. But right now, it's a small thing where people can, like the Perth Hub, have organised an unconference to coincide with a day of bringing folks together in the real to watch the NENA conference online and to be together and hang out. That little hub, that money goes into the NENA bank account, but it's earmarked for the Perth Hub. So it's really basic stuff at the moment. But yeah, Bronwyn, I hope one day we have an issue about how we share money. Wouldn't that be luxurious? We'll see.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, no, we're doing fine right now. But anyway.
Yeah, us too. We remain a very kind of, smell of an oily rag organization that's done 10 years of pretty good work. So
Driven by
a
love.
lot with a bunch of volunteers. Yeah.
That's it.
Well, I might actually on that turn it over to others here to see if they have questions, maybe things about how to get more involved, how to find out more about what new economies, alternative economies, well-being economies, solidarity economies might look like, and some of the discussions that you're all having already. Does anyone, you can just turn your video on if you want to ask a question or make a comment for that matter. It's not Q&A. We are interested in your views, not only your questions. So
yes, we certainly are. And please realize that what we're doing is very organic. We're not, we don't think we have the answers. We just have a platform for bringing people together to explore what's important to them. So we're really open to suggestions, ideas, comments.
I guess one question I have on that, because I think that's really important, a solidarity platform to bring people together. And I said to you when we were having our preparation meeting, the International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty is exactly that. It's an alliance of organizations who are doing the work, and they bring the work and the needs to an alliance platform. That platform doesn't tell us what to do. We speak together there. And I'm wondering if you've had many organizations sign up yet who have runs on the board, like stuff that they're doing on the ground, and any examples you can show of members who are actively developing economies where they live, local economies, for example, CSA stuff.
Well,
I don't know, community supported agriculture.
We have many members who are connected to community gardens. We've got Joel Orchard, Nick Rose, and others connected to, well, Nick and Joel do different things, but they often work together. They volunteered to help us with our food hub. Joel being the wonderful leader that he is, and the CSA projects that are involved with. So he's a member of NENA, but he's already leading that network. So we stay connected through that. When you say projects on the ground, NENA, think of NENA more like a professional association than a project delivery mode. we've got 250 paid members. I think 30 of them are organisations, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind us mentioning them. The Galactic Workers Co-op. There's a couple of other workers co-ops around Australia. We've got, I don't normally tend to pry into member details, but we've got a lot of individuals who themselves represent at least 2 organisations. We have people like Bronwyn who do a huge amount of volunteer work, as well as are embedded in universities. Bronwyn's a professor of law. I'm an adjunct at Griffith. I run AILA, NENA and Future Dreaming. We have Indigenous colleagues who are involved in social justice projects. We have people involved in the health sector. Our health hub had a wonderful evening looking at health and well-being, as opposed to the chemical pharmaceutical responses to fixing people once they're broken. We have people from all those sectors represent people doing stuff: arts, culture, narratives and storytelling. Got a really strong group interested in how we tell the story in Australia and connect to others. Chris Reedy from UTS. We've actually got a really lovely cohort of researchers, academics and professors who come to NENA, as well as a lot of grassroots projects, including social enterprises. I know like East Gippsland Mob have just started their own collective, their members. And I think Bronwyn alluded to this. One of the things we find that NENA offers is that cross-sectoral stuff. And we always hear it at conferences where someone who's embedded, or we've got folks working on renewable energy, community energy, you've got Pingala, folks who are actively involved in helping Indigenous communities transition out of fossil fuels and into their own community-owned resources. But that's what we often hear at the conferences and even the webinars. You've got a mix of, academics and researchers, community grassroots people, individuals just volunteering into different schemes. It's a lovely cross-section of people. We just want to grow it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. That was good. That was quite a list of things people are doing. That's great. That was the question. It wasn't what is NENA doing. I didn't think you were trying to do. I'm interested in what the people coming in.
Yeah. Well, they're all over the shop in a good way. Not a
good. Great. Awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
No, that's okay.
Have I got anyone out in audience land who's not meant to be an audience, you're meant to be participants, interested in some contributions or questions around new alternative well-being solidarity economies?
Maybe while they're thinking of their questions, I can actually share a really cool story, which is why we're called the New Economy Network Australia. Mm-hmm. In 2016, Bronwyn and I had been planning from early that year for the conference, and we talked about, putting to the group, would they be interested in becoming part of some kind of new economy coalition? That was the name of is the name of a US group. They're only for organizational members though. And I remember very vividly, we sat down at a lovely, I think it was a Chinese restaurant, and we both said, what we don't want is for the group to get bogged down into what progressives often do. And that wonderful book by George Lakoff, Don't Think of an Elephant, points to this idea that often what we do is we sit in our own little pocket and go, I'm only interested in these things. And if you're different to me, then I'm too busy doing this. So what we deliberately did, and I know I deliberately held this space very firmly the next day in the conference, was we said to everybody, there are so many different ways you can label the alternative economic system to consumer capitalism, industrialized societies. And we rattled them all off. Social solidarity, ecological economics, steady state, regenerative economics, community economics, diverse economics, obviously socialism, Marxism. A lot of the older folks in our network are still very into the isms. And yet what we saw was the New Economy Organising Network, NEON, and a couple of other new economy. And we ended up choosing New Economy, and we asked everybody at the conference. We had a survey that we gave them all the first day, which I then processed late overnight, and we showed them some slides to say, these are the things you want from a network, and this is what you're telling us you could live with. And we actually asked everyone to live with a name that was generic enough to be a broad church to bring everyone together. So what does a new economy mean? Well, interestingly, when we had our conference in 2017, Robert Costanza and a bunch of folks came to me and said, we're setting up this International Wellbeing Economy Alliance. And I remember thinking, gee, that's a good name. I didn't know about the wellbeing economy framing. And since then, We All has really exploded globally, also assisted by Kate Raworth's donor economics and all of that. So I think if you had to ask me what is a new economy, it's a wellbeing economy. And I can articulate all the different elements of that, but that's really what we mean. And we may transition one day, who knows? But we can't use the same acronym because then we'd be WENA. I don't think that's very nice.
Yeah, I guess it's, I mean, as you said at the very start, it's a new old economy, isn't it? So
some of the best.
I also am not sure how that would work in NONA.
No, that's right. So that's why it was a very deliberate strategy. It kind of means everything and nothing, but it means what we want it to mean.
Sure. Yeah.
The economy. And I just wanted to share that story because
thanks for sharing.
So it was very deliberate.
Michelle Smith, I think, had your camera on. And
oh, hello, Michelle.
Okay, I really love the idea that we need to change something. We need to build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So I think we need to imagine and identify what we want for our future and perhaps just set targets. For example, the level of population. Also, when we need to lift people out of poverty, we could do that with collaborative activities, not necessarily consuming more, sharing more and collaborating rather than increasing consumption. And you can apply this to a lot of sectors, for example, housing, transport, and food. So I hope that lifting people out of poverty doesn't mean more consumption and more degradation of planetary resources.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Michelle. And certainly even in the very simple, those 5 principles I showed for NENA, the first one's ecological sustainability, so that everything else we do has to fit within our ecological limits. And I do think that's why the donut economics model, though flawed, has captured people's imagination, because it says we've got our planetary boundaries or our ecological limits, and what we have to do is help everyone live well, fairly and justly, with enough inside the capacity of the living world and ecological limits. And I have to say that was my PhD. I look at how we can structure governance to live within limits in a society that has traditionally been focused on endless growth. So yeah, I'm totally with you.
Thanks very much for that, Michelle. So I really love the idea that we need to make the existing model obsolete.
Good. I agree.
Yeah, AFSA uses that quote all the time. It's in our Farming Democracy book. It's one of the things we probably cite the most. And
it is.
And
it's an old quote.
It's probably like NENA. We're kind of doing both. We're trying to put reform the existing system as it is here, because it's the reality we're working with, while over here we're quietly building the new system, so that there comes a point where this one crumbles and we're ready. And
yeah, I remember hearing someone, I think it might have been Sam Alexander, who's one of the most amazing sort of voluntary simplicity degrowth guys, academic, and works on country down in Victoria. But he always says something like, the power is to keep building while the rest of it crumbles. He said it more beautifully than that. And you have this image of the kind of the old decay of the concrete, but we're in there planting the trees and growing the life and building this new system, while the rest of the bits we don't want, hopefully, whatever. It's a metaphor and I like it.
Yeah, no, for me, it's really powerful. That's what community supported agriculture entirely is. That's a very on the ground, real alternative economy of solidarity, where people subscribe for a minimum period of time. And no matter what happens, they stay with the farmer, and the farmer doesn't bear the risks of nature alone. And while we're doing that, and we're slowly building the CSA movement in Australia, but although it's sped up under the pandemic, I have to say, we're slowly doing that. And people have flocked to that system as they've watched the old one suffer and struggle. When they went to those supermarkets and the shelves were bare, more of them look to see, well, what are the alternatives? And I'm only sorry we weren't already a bigger movement, but it has been growing.
Can I just say, I think everyone thought that when COVID kicked in, the lockdown happened, suddenly ALA got a lot more inquiries about systems change and other things. It was as if a lot of people who were kind of just putting up with the system because they had to suddenly looked up and went, whoa. And then folks like all of us who've been working on systems change for a very long time were kind of going, here's one I prepared earlier. But we all wished we were in a better position. I kept saying to folks, I wish we had the NENA civil society strategy now so we could say, look what we were saying, all that people get, that a lot of us, including AFSA and NENA, others. I was just going to ask Bronwyn, did you want to comment on, we've got a small emerging hub around law reform and legal services. I thought it might be of interest to this group. Bronwyn did an amazing piece of work, Where Are the Community Lawyers? And AFSA has a food fund, a food fighting fund.
We have a legal defense fund.
We have
a lawyer on staff.
I was actually thinking exactly, I mean, it sort of goes both with the grain of what you are both saying, and it's the counterpoint. So with the quote and what you're talking about, how it says, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. The problem is sometimes if you get inspiring enough and popular enough, the existing reality wants to fight you, even if you don't want to fight it. So the law reform side is interesting because so much of, I mean, it is really fast, so much of this is done on the smell of an oil rag, as Tammy said, and with volunteers and often in the cracks of other things and very informally. But, the more it solidifies and formalizes, the more it has to encounter law and legal reform and so on, and sometimes get attacked by the law. So I think in the food space, you get people sort of pursuing you for not following the current regulations, whether that's because they're actually worried that you're becoming a competitor or because they actually just, the motivations could be multiple. But I think that's partly what your legal defense, I don't think we're quite at the point that the US evidently sends riot squads into raw milk plants and things like that. We hopefully are not like that.
No, I mean, we took inspiration from the Farmer to Consumer Legal Defense Fund in America when we established our own LDF, but it's a different matter. It's not so much what they talk about as the food police coming after us, which is a thing in America. And that fund was quite focused on litigation, actually, whereas we've been focused on steady reform. Not through litigation, through lobbying politicians to reform.
Right, so that's the sort of building side as well. Yeah, because I was thinking about it in terms of this kind of protect and defend ways of using law, and then there's the healing and building ways of using law. Yeah. And I one of the things that I'm actually keen for, we don't have hubs that address this directly, but there's so much, the professional services that support the growth of anything. At the moment, the business planners and the lawyers and the accountants that sort of help the regular economy chug along are just so plugged into ways of doing things that perpetuate the problems, often unwittingly. But it's just, if we could inspire career paths for young professionals in accounting and business planning and law, where people would really get excited about following a whole career path, supporting this, as opposed to doing, pro bono on the side. And if that could become sustainable, that's really what that paper that Michelle referred to was about. I think it's called Where Are All the Community Lawyers? And I'm doing another thing in about a month, which I think is called Barefoot Lawyers, because there's barefoot engineers and barefoot doctors.
What's that? That sounds cool.
So in fact, I need to, I'll be talking to you.
Does that come from that, isn't it Barefoot Economics or something? Barefoot?
Yeah, there's some, I think in India, maybe it started barefoot economists, but now there's barefoot engineers and there's barefoot doctors and there are even barefoot lawyers, but we don't talk enough about them.
I live in the central highlands of Victoria, where in summer there's snakes and in winter there's snow, so I'm going to keep my shoes on. But I was
going to make the opposite joke, Tammy. I'm in Queensland. I'm always barefoot. We think we in our family, it's kind of the joke, like we have to go out. Oh, I think I might need some new thongs.
Yeah, no, ours is the opposite. I'm going to need some like ethically produced boots to be able that are made hopefully not too far away.
I'm sure.
Yes. That's really good. The barefoot movement. I like that idea of the different way of thinking about things. And actually, I would say in terms of influencing policy, because like we said, while building the new system, we're certainly working to reform the old one, as are, all of you, and particularly the lawyers that are part of NENA have been for some time with your environmental work especially. And I think we have found that that question of intent or malice that has stopped us from what we want to do is not usually very intentful or malicious. It's mostly extremely ill-informed. And a big part of that is because organizations like ours have never had the resources to make sure people are in those rooms with the frequency that the big end of town is. And so it has become reliant on groups like NENA and AFSA, who are smell of an oily rag volunteer rat bag activists, but prepared to turn up even though nobody's paying us. And certainly in Victoria, we've achieved really great reforms for small scale farmers because we're here and we're prepared to go into those meetings even though we're not being paid to do any of that work, because we just believe in it. And I think that's where like the hub idea of what NENA's doing, and same for us with our members who do local action and are connected to the national body, how we can keep supporting them to turn up in the offices to and give them the legal support for what reform they could make in Queensland or in New South Wales, like we have down here in Victoria. Because we have to chip away and we have to do it as volunteers, because at the end of the day, big end of town's not going to fund us, and we wouldn't take their money if they offered. So I think the new economy for me still involves an awful lot of free work.
Tell me about it.
Because we're creating a just future for our children and their children and their children, right? Yeah, and that's worth fighting for.
Absolutely. As I say, there's no other game in town.
There is no other game in town. I agree. I wouldn't do anything else. Do we have, everyone seems very shy tonight. I think they've all got like Zoom zombieism.
No, that's okay. And NENA is a bit of it's not so much an abstract concept, but as a network, it's not as exciting as a kind of put your feet in the ground and plant things. So I completely understand.
But it's super interesting, and I really appreciate the work that you guys are doing to create that national solidarity around the economies. It's I really appreciate it. I think everyone is here because they appreciate it too. But perhaps it's less of a now I know what to do.
Yeah, well, if you want something to do, please do. Sorry, Bronwyn.
Mentioning the course.
Oh yes, can you talk about that?
Yeah,
absolutely. How about I start to mention it and then share screen again, because I think I had it up. I do. So for those who are interested, I'm really excited about this because I've been working with Joe McNeil to make this little bugger happen. One of the really big issues that popped up very early on in 2016 and beyond in all our discussions was the current way that people are taught about economics, the way that dominant discourse talks about economics on the news, every other thing. It's always just, there is no alternative. There is just this system. So what I'm showing you here is on the website, we've got Building a Wellbeing Economy, Foundations for Learning and Practice. It's an 8-week course hosted through the Griffith University's Yunus Centre with Ingrid Burkett and Joe McNeil. And Joe McNeil and I have done a huge amount of work together to slip it into a Griffith University system, even though it's not an accredited course. They call it a digital badge, but for us, it's a pilot project to see what we can get going. And it's just the beginning of very big aspirations for moving in and helping shift the conversation at an education level around what new economies or wellbeing economies look like. You'll see we've got tons of great people involved. 8 weeks. It does cost money. I apologize for that. A few folks have asked for scholarships. We're going to do our best to maybe rustle up some money for that. But to have a university run it so that eventually we can get it into full accreditation, or versions of this, or work with other people to do it, is what I'm excited about. So, and Bronwyn, as of today, we only need 15 enrollments. The course is like $295 for 8 weeks with 21 or plus experts. But as of today, we have 6 enrollments. We only need 15 to make Griffith love us. So I'm thrilled to pieces.
Fantastic.
I'd be happy if we just scrape through with the 15 people who'll actually pay, because of course all of us in this sector have trouble scrounging money, but this course isn't really for all of us. It's for professionals who might be on the edge of thinking about a different way of being, who are perhaps still working in the paid economy and would like to come over and have a look and a listen and a think. So yeah, very excited.
Yeah, well, Michelle, we'll be super happy to share that through the AFSA channels.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great getting this stuff out there. And
if we do future courses, we'll be able to really expand and get more focus on, you know, groups like yours and others. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, to spread the love. Just got to find all those little ways to do it. So.
Yes, and now I did say, wait, Julian's got a hand up. I can't see all the things. I'm not very good at this when there's more than one thing happening.
I've stopped sharing. You should be able to see now.
Yes, that's me.
Oh, hi, Julian. Off you go.
How are you? Can I ask something?
Of course.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you. Thanks, first of all, for that introduction and to explain you what NENA is. I've been following for a while, like what you guys doing, because I myself have been trying to set up a couple of cooperatives. We have one small cooperative here in Melbourne where we build wicking beds and self-watering planters and stuff. And I'm doing another one at the moment of tracelands where we fix roofs, do carpentry work, but we are at the moment on the process of setting up that. But I wanted to ask you in terms of, because it just keeps on my head, this thing of the economic transition that, I don't know, I wanted to ask you, like, what's your view on that in terms of that it is possible that economic transition just by making the actual model obsolete? Because I got the feel from what I've seen already happening with the cooperative movement in other places that it's just going to be absorbed by the normal economic system. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, absolutely.
It's happening. I'm seeing it. Like it can be just good intentions, but seems to me it has to have something more coherent and in another way. I know you try to keep your shot a bit out of ideological thinking and all that sort of stuff, but seem to me it may be necessary, because if it's not like a clear direction in terms of where this whole thing is going to go, it's just going to be absorbed. What's your view on that?
Yeah, well, I can certainly share some thoughts with you, and I agree, absolutely agree. And perhaps Bronwyn can comment after. Number one, some of the new economy, well-being economy things that people care about have been around for a very long time, decades or even hundreds of years, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Mutuals, co-ops, the kinds of everyone helping each other emerged then. But as many people say, the sharing economy, the mutual support, the localized folks helping each other, that is the most ancient economy of all, because all societies, all humans like to live together, work together, share, etc. But taking on the powerful mindset beast of capitalism, which is so clever in taking over, exactly as you say, you know, people dream up a good idea. I think Bronwyn and I think it was you and I bemoaning a couple of years ago after we were watching Janelle Orsi's work with the sharing economy. And then suddenly there was an advert on a bus that said the real sharing economy, and it had a McDonald's burger because people were sharing the burger. I was like, oh my goodness, capitalism does the big interests, and we're not being naive. We're being strategic. We're building what we can with what we have right now and not waiting for permission. We're bringing people together to forge greater links between each other and to get people's ideas into this civil society strategy. And for me, the civil society strategy is a very humble beginning this year, next year, the year after, but I'm hell-bent on getting a lot of resources so that not only are we just quietly pecking around the edges of the system right now building, we will be building, but then we'll be using all of those examples of a better way forward to push and to advocate for wide systemic change. But all of these efforts will still continue to come up against the status quo, which are large corporations, fossil fuel and other extractivism in Australia, vested interests, politicians who are very comfortable with the system as it is. So pushing back against power, I am personally committed to the NENA approach because it's a way of bringing more and more voices into a place where the right kind of direction can be continued, but very strategically done, so that by the time we do shift the system, and we will, because it's changing very rapidly, more people will have a say over what that new system looks like. So absolutely, right now, a lot of the great efforts do become fringe or continue to be fringe because lots and lots of the big forces are pushing back at things. So I don't know if that helps the answer, but I sort of agree with you, but we do have strategies for moving into the future where, by building solidarity, brings us back to your topic, we can at least have a bloody good go at trying to change the system and push back at the nasty things we don't like. I don't know, Bronwyn, if you wanted to add to that though.
Oh, I mean, it's a really fair question and an important one, and you know, part of my response wants to be that it's really important to continue that conversation, but also to continue this work constantly in alliance with it. So I think alliances is part of. So I found, until I sort of became involved, in fact, the reason I got involved, I'm sorry if there's a lot of background noise, I've got a house full of children, but trying to get them out of my focus. So I got involved in this because I'd got paralyzed and quite depressed by a sense that I was, through my research, sort of very tied into much more contested activist networks, which were fighting incredibly important things and continue to do so. But I just got, it was depleting. And when I came across early instances of what is about building and healing, to go back to that contrast between protecting and defending and building and healing, I just think we've got to run both tracks all the time. And I felt like there wasn't nearly enough collective and vibrant energy that I could tap into easily around the building and healing. And what's so fantastic now is that there's more and more of that. And so if it can form constructive alliances with the people that are maybe fighting in a more contested way, that's really important. I think that the really tough issues on shifting really formal ownership rules around assets and land and money, and I think there'll be massive fight back on that range. And I'm not sure how much the sort of day-to-day work of NENA could shift that directly, but that's where I would turn to alliances. But then the other part of it that I would almost sort of push back against a bit, the risks that you point to, is that I think it's this kind of work that NENA is doing, and especially when it crosses sectors and brings people together from different sort of projects around energy, food, or whatever the different areas are. I think it helps to change the culture and give people a positive sense of something to tap into, so that if and when there is a crumbling, that instead of turning to fear or kind of authoritarian promises, that people have something else to tap into culturally. And that can only be done by this kind of bottom-up, quite informal thing, as opposed to kind of fighting on a formal front or on.
Beautifully said, Bronwyn. That is just fantastic. I mean, obviously that's what I agree with. That's why we're doing it, that we must resist, but we must build. The task is huge, but we don't really have any other choice, do we? We can sit back and watch the system keep rolling, or we can play our little humble part and have a bloody good go at it. So.
Yeah, no, I'm conscious we're out of time. I do think that's an interesting point right there at the end about a potential role for NENA if your members in your board think so. But like AFSA does, of lobbying the government with, you know, the power of the collective voice for reform to the economic system. I think that is.
Well, that's what our
you've got a whole bunch of lawyers involved, so you know.
Yeah, but we've also got the multiplicity of different ideas. But that, honestly, the beginnings of this civil society strategy, I can't stress it enough. I've been waiting for 4 years to get to this stage, and we're now just beginning to weave the story of what is it that we want. And it's only in that level of specificity that we can turn around and say to the government, there you go, we don't like what you're doing on the issues around UBI or ignoring this or that.
Yeah.
We want to see this. And that's when it won't be so much NENA doing the lobbying, but what we hope is that the hubs will come to a point where they can say, we're all part of this NENA hub. NENA has given us a chance to come together because we're all very busy people, and that's when the lobbying power starts. But we'll see what the future holds. We could fizzle and burn out. We could grow into something of use. We will see. So, but yeah, totally agree with you.
Well, we'll certainly be watching this space and sharing your good work wherever we can. So
yeah, and do, you know, if AFSA would like to join up, some groups are sort of joining as paid organisation members, or we can find another way to just have you as a member in the network. Then you can share your wares into the network as well. So because we are a network, it's all about who's coming into the space. It's not just 5 of us talking about it. It depends completely on people coming in. It's not like an organisation where we pay 6 people and we've got all the answers. We literally don't. We have to.
No, I get it, because you're talking to the same kind of organization. So 100% the same. Thank you so much. It's been really good to have you guys here. And
thanks for the invitation. Appreciate
talk about more positive futures for all of us. And here's to working together further to see. And thanks heaps to Amita, who's hiding behind the AFSA logo and managing all of our tech for the sessions, and has been tireless, I should say, for the 10 sessions. So thanks everyone, and hopefully we'll see some of you at the Food Sovereignty Convergence. Amita, did I fail to say anything I needed to say?
I think we covered everything.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you very much. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Also, I'm going to drop the link to the Food Sovereignty Convergence in the chat just now.
Thanks, Amita.
As we say, we'd love to see you all there to keep having these kind of conversations.
Absolutely.
And I hope everyone stays safe and stays well. And I hope
take care down there.
Yeah, I hope we all see some light at the end of the tunnel soon, and that it's a long tunnel. So I think maybe get used to it.
Well, and from a NENA point of view, with my NENA hat on, the tunnel is a necessary focus for the new transition to speed up.
Absolutely.
There's so much that COVID's shown us we're capable of doing without expending huge amounts of fossil fuel energy traveling all over the place.
Absolutely.
On a more positive note, though, could I also invite Amida or anyone from AFSA, do share any of your events and activities on our Facebook group and page. That's a very small little way, but please regularly, every week. That's the good thing about NENA. Everyone can bang their own drum. That's the whole point. Everyone bangs the drum. We've got some kind of drum orchestra going on.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And lovely to meet you, Bronwyn. Take care, everyone.
Happy unpacking, Bronwyn.
Thank you.
See you, love.
Bye. Bye.